Hello champs, I hope you all are doing great. My name is Biswajit, I'm your botany teacher. Today we are going to discuss a very important chapter of class 11 and the chapter is Morphology of Flowering Plants. So what is morphology? Morphology is nothing but the study of external structures. When we look at the different plants, we find that all the plants they do not have same morphological features. They have different morphological features, that is they have different morphology. Why? Because under different conditions, in order to adapt, in order to survive and reproduce under different conditions, the different plants they have different types of morphological, that is external structures. Okay, and when we talk about the plant groups, we have various plant groups like algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperms, angiosperm. So only the angiosperms have flower. So in this class we are not going to talk about the morphology of other plant groups. We are going to stick to the plant group that is the angiosperm, which is the most advanced plant group. Okay, so the topics in today's class which we are going to cover are root, stem, leaf, flower, inflorescence, fruit, seed and angiospermic families. Okay, and this chapter you have to learn it, and from this chapter the question will be asked from the examples. Okay, so this is, you have to learn all the examples which are given in the NCERT. Okay, so let's get started then. So the first thing which I want to tell you is the type of organs present in angiosperm. So in angiosperm, the organs can be classified into two groups. One is reproductive and second is the non-reproductive, that is vegetative. So what is the basis for this classification? The basis is the involvement of the organ in sexual reproduction. In case of angiosperms, the reproduction can be asexual, which is also known as vegetative propagation, or it can be sexual. So here the basis is the involvement of organ in the reproduction. Which type of reproduction? Sexual reproduction. So if any organ participates in sexual reproduction, or if it is a product of the sexual reproduction, that organ will be called as reproductive organ. For example, the flower is the site of sexual reproduction. It participates in sexual reproduction, and the seed and the fruit, they are the product of sexual reproduction, and that is why these three organs are called as reproductive organs. Okay, and root, stem and leaf, no doubt they participate in reproduction, but in asexual reproduction, in vegetative reproduction. That is why they are not considered as reproductive organs, they are considered as vegetative organs. Okay, I repeat, these organs also participate in reproduction, but which type of reproduction? Asexual, vegetative. That is why we do not call them as reproductive organs. Okay, so I can write here what is the basis for the classification. The basis for classification is the involvement in sexual reproduction. Involvement in the sexual reproduction. Okay, so we have two groups of organs in the angiosperms. Okay, so we will discuss all these organs one by one. So let us first talk about the root. Okay, so we have the plant axis. Okay, and in the plant axis we have two parts. One is ascending part and second one is the descending part, and it's obvious that the root will be representing the descending part of the plant axis. And in most of the cases, that means normally the root develops from the radicle of the embryo present in the seed. Radicle is a part of embryo. Okay, it is not always necessary that the root will develop from the radicle. Sometimes the root will develop from the other parts, and those roots will be called as adventitious roots. They will be called as adventitious root. Okay, so normally the root develops from the radicle, and the root, they grow towards the gravity, and that is why they are positively geotropic, and they move towards the water, and that is why they are positively hydrotropic. And in most of the cases they go away from the light, and that is why they are negatively phototropic. So they are positively geotropic, positively hydrotropic and negatively phototropic. Okay, and normally they are non-photosynthetic because they are underground, so they do not get any light, and that is why they do not perform any photosynthesis. So they are non-photosynthetic and they do not have buds. Normally they do not have buds, but there are some cases, for example dahlia, in that case the root will have the buds. Okay, and whenever the root has bud, that root will participate in the vegetative propagation, okay, or that is asexual reproduction. But there are some features which are always found in the root. Okay, these are the features which are normally found in the root, but there are some features which are always present in the root. So what are those features? One is root will never have any kind of node, any kind of internodes. Okay, and it will show endogenous branch. So whatever the branches, whatever the lateral branches of the root develop, they develop from the pericycle. So I will write here, why do we call the branching of the root as endogenous? Because the lateral roots, they develop from the pericycle, which is an internal structure, and because the lateral roots, they develop from the pericycle, that is why the branching of the root is endogenous in nature. Okay, now what about the root system? The root system is of three types. What are those? One is taproot system, second is fibrous root system, and third is adventitious root system. Okay, and this taproot system is normally found in dicots, and one of the examples of dicot is mustard. Okay, and this fibrous root system is found in monocots. Okay, and the example is maize, and adventitious root system is found in both monocot as well as dicot. So banyan is a dicot, okay, and it has adventitious root system, adventitious root. Okay, and grass, monstera, asparagus, they are monocots and they have adventitious root. Okay, so any root which develops from any part of the plant except radicle, that will be called as adventitious root. Any root which develops from any part of the plant except the radicle, that is adventitious root. Okay, and what about the taproot system and the fibrous root system? Let me explain you. Okay, so the root which develops from the radicle, that is called as primary root. The root which develops from the radicle, that is called as primary root. The root which develops from the radicle is called as primary root. Okay, so in both these cases, in taproot system and fibrous root system, the primary root will develop from the radicle. Okay, so suppose this one is the primary root. This one is the primary root. Okay, and now this primary root will show branching. Okay, so from here the secondary roots will be developed. Okay, lateral root will develop. So this is the lateral root, this is also the lateral root, this is secondary root, this is primary, this is secondary, and the secondary root will further undergo branching to produce the tertiary root. Okay, and the tertiary roots, they will further undergo branching to form the rootlets. Okay, just a minute, the thickness will decrease, Okay, see, these are the tertiary roots. Okay, now let me draw the rootlets. So these are the rootlets. Okay, so let me label them. This is primary root. Okay, this one is secondary root, this one is tertiary root, and this one is rootlet. So in this case, you can clearly see that the primary root which develops from the radicle is persistent, and it shows a number of branching, and this entire entire complex is called as taproot system. What about the fibrous root system? So suppose this one is the stem, this one is the stem part. Okay, and suppose this one is the radicle. So this one is the primary root which develops from the radicle. So this is primary root. Okay, and after some time what will happen? This primary root is short-lived. Okay, let me write, this is primary root. This is primary root, and this one is the stem. This one is stem, and because the primary root is short-lived, that is why this primary root will be replaced by some other structures. So let me draw that then here. Okay, so this one is the stem. Okay, and now there is no primary root, so this primary root will be replaced by a number of fibrous roots. So these are the fibrous roots, and these roots are called as fibrous root system. Okay, so the fibrous root system or the fibrous root, they develop from the base of the stem. They develop from the base of the stem. So I can write here that the fibrous root, they develop from base of stem. Okay, what are these? These are basically fibrous root. And remember one thing, between, if I say between taproot and fibrous root system, which one is more efficient for absorption and anchorage? So your answer will be fibrous root. Okay, so I will write here, this one is more efficient for absorption as well as anchorage, for absorption of water and minerals as well as anchorage. Okay, so this was about the root system. So let me repeat, if the primary root which is formed from the radicle is persistent and it produces a number of branches, that will be called as taproot system. And if the primary root which is formed from the radicle is short-lived and replaced by a number of fibrous roots, that will be called as fibrous root system. And any root which develops from any other part of the stem, any other part of the plant except the radicle, that is called as adventitious root system. So this was about root system. Now let us talk about the main functions of root. Root has different functions, but what are the main functions? The main functions are anchorage, to provide anchorage to the plant. Okay, it helps in absorption of water and minerals from the soil, and it helps in the synthesis of various plant growth regulators, that is the plant hormones, and it is responsible for storage of food. So these are the 4 main functions of the root as per the NCERT. Okay, how to remember? You please remember AAS. Okay, AASS. So these are the main functions of root. Apart from these 4 functions, the root also performs other functions, and those functions are and in order to perform those extra functions, the root has to be modified. Okay, so why the root undergoes modification? To perform other functions apart from the main functions. Okay, so one of the functions performed by the modified root is to store food, store additional amount of food. Main function is to store food. Okay, main function of the root is to store food, but if the root has to perform the storage of very high amount of food, then that root will be modified and that root will become swollen or fleshy. So any root which stores high amount of food, that will be swollen and that root will be called as fleshy root. And depending upon the shape of the root can be classified. Okay, so and remember one thing, the swollen or the fleshy root which is meant for the storage of food, that can be a modified taproot or that can be modified adventitious root. Okay, so the modified taproot are classified on the basis of their shape. Okay, so they can be conical shape, they can be fusiform type. In fusiform type, both the ends they will have the pointed end and the middle part will be swollen. Okay, in napiform what will happen? The upper part will be swollen and the lower part will be highly pointed and it will appear as if it is a spherical structure. Okay, in tuberous, that means tuberous means no definite form, and you have to remember the examples. Okay, so carrot, radish, beet, turnip and mirabilis jalapa, which is also known as 4 o'clock plant. Which plant? 4 o'clock plant. Okay, so all of these are the examples of modified taproot which are meant for storage of food. Okay, sweet potato is also an example of fleshy root, but this one is modified adventitious root, and this one also does not have any specific shape or form. That is why this one is also tuberous. Okay, so tuberous modified taproot is 4 o'clock plant. Tuberous adventitious root is sweet potato. tuberous stem is potato. Tuberous stem is potato. Okay. Now, apart from performing storage of additional food, some roots get modified to provide extra mechanical strength or support to the plant. Okay, and the examples of such root which provide mechanical support to the plant are prop root and stilt root, and the stilt root is also called as brace root. And the prop root, we find it in the banyan tree. You can see here that these are the stems. Okay, and from these stems you can see the roots are developing. The roots are developing. Okay, and these roots they are growing vertically downward, and once they reach the soil surface, they will enter inside the soil, and that they will act as pillar and provide mechanical strength to the entire plant. Okay, so these prop roots, they are acting as pillar. Okay, so they are meant for providing mechanical support. How they are growing? They are growing vertically downward. Okay, so this is prop root. This one is prop root found in banyan tree. Which tree? Banyan tree. And this one is stilt root. Stilt root, which is also known as brace root. Okay, and this one is maize plant. Okay, and you can see this part is node. Okay, and this part is also node, and from the node a number of roots are developing, and the roots are growing in oblique manner. They are going in oblique manner, and they will reach the soil surface. They will penetrate the soil, and they will provide mechanical strength to the stem. Okay, so these roots, they grow vertically downward, and these roots, they grow obliquely. They grow obliquely. So this is one difference. And here the roots are developing from the nodes. Which nodes? All the nodes? No, from the lower nodes only. From upper nodes the roots will not develop, and they develop from the lateral branches, or I can say the stems. Okay, so this is about the differences. This is about the difference. Okay, and this is found in plants like maize and sugarcane, etc., etc. Okay, here I have written the differences between prop root and stilt root. You can see they grow vertically downward and they grow obliquely. Okay, and they develop from the lower nodes, not from all nodes. Okay, and now there are some roots which are meant for gaseous sections, and such roots are called as respiratory roots, or they are also called as pneumatophores, and they are found in such areas where the salt concentration is high, and that is why such plants will be called as halophytes. And these areas are marshy areas or swampy areas. And one of the examples of plants where the pneumatophore, that is the respiratory root, is observed is Rhizophora. And this is one exception where the root grows in upward direction. Otherwise, normally the root grows in downward direction. That means the normally root is positively geotropic, but here the root is negatively geotropic. Okay, why the root has to grow in upward direction? What is the reason? Let me explain you. So suppose this is the soil. Okay, and this is the stem, and this is the root part. Okay, and in this soil the concentration of oxygen is very, very low. And because the concentration of oxygen inside the soil is very low, that is why to meet the or to get sufficient oxygen, the pneumatophores will develop. And at the tip of the pneumatophores, a number of pores will be there, and those pores will uptake O2 from the atmosphere, and they will release CO2 from inside to the atmosphere. Okay, so the root is pneumatophore, and the tips at the tip pores are present, and those pores are called as pneumatothode. Okay, so the root is pneumatophore, and the pores are pneumatothores. Okay, now so these are the three modifications. Okay, three types of modification. One modification is to store additional amount of food. Second modification is to provide mechanical strength or support to the plant body. Third modification is to help gaseous section. Sorry. Now let us try to understand the different regions of root. Okay, so root has three different regions. Okay, and apart from three different regions, another structure is present, and that structure is called as root cap. So what is the function of root cap? The root cap, it protects the growing point. So this part is the growing point. Growing point, which is also known as zone of meristem. So when the root penetrates through the soil, it will face friction, and to protect itself to protect the growing point from the friction, the root cap will be there, and this root cap secretes some mucilage compounds, which acts as lubricating substances, and they will reduce the friction, and that will reduce the damage of the growing point. Okay, and this root cap is thimble shaped structure, and this gets damaged, and if it gets damaged, new root cap will be formed. So the root cap is, what is the function of root cap? To protect the growing point. How does it protect it? By secreting lubricating substance like mucilage. Okay, and this is parenchymatous structure. And if the root cap gets damaged, it will be replaced. New root cap will be formed. And in case of hydrophytes, the root caps are absent. Instead, it will have root pockets. Okay. Now, remember one thing: in the growing point, the cells which are present are meristematic cells, and that is why we call this zone as zone of meristem. Okay, but all the cells of this zone of meristem, they will not be dividing. You can see these are green cells. Okay, and these green cells are non-dividing cells. So in the center of the zone of meristem, a mass of non-dividing cell will be present, and that zone is called as quiescent zone. So what is quiescent zone? The zone which is present in the growing point, which is having the cells which are non-dividing. So it will have non-dividing cells. Okay. Now see, the root has developed from this end, and that is why this end will be called as proximal end. This end will be called as proximal end, and this will be called as distal end. This end will be called as distal end. Okay, and towards the proximal side of the growing point, there will be a zone, and that zone will be called as zone of elongation. So this zone is called as zone of elongation. Zone of elongation. Okay, in the zone of meristem, so this is zone of meristem, right? In the zone of meristem, the cells are dividing, but in the zone of elongation, the cells are non-dividing, but the cells are highly elongated. How they get highly elongated? Because of formation of vacuoles. Okay, and because the cells, they undergo elongation, that is why this zone will be responsible for growth of the root. So I can say growth of root is because of two different reasons. One, zone of elongation, second, zone of meristem. And which one is responsible for more growth? It is the zone of elongation. Okay, so here the cells will be elongated and non-dividing. How they get elongated? Because of formation of the vacuoles, right? And now proximal to the zone of elongation, there will be a zone, and in this zone the cell will differentiate, the cells will mature. Okay, and that is why this zone is called as zone of maturation. This zone is called as zone of maturation. Why do you call this zone as zone of maturation? Because the cells present in this zone, they are mature cells. Okay, and they are differentiated cells. So I can call this as zone of differentiation. You can call this as zone of differentiation. Okay, and we know the function of the root, one of the main functions of the root is to absorb water and minerals. So do you think that the entire root is going to absorb water and minerals? No, it is the root hairs. Okay, and the root hairs are present only in the zone of differentiation, zone of maturation. Okay, so let me draw the root hairs. Okay, so suppose these are the root hairs. these are the root hairs. Okay, so these are root hairs. And remember one thing, these root hairs are basically unicellular. Okay, and they are extension of the epidermal cells. They are extension of epidermal cells. Okay, so I can say they are extension of epidermal cells, and they help in absorption. Actually, they increase the surface area. SA is surface area of root, and that is how they help in increased water and mineral absorption. Okay, so this was about different zones. So I can say proximal to growing point, I have zone of elongation. Proximal to zone of elongation, I have zone of maturation. Okay, or in other words, I can say distal to the zone of maturation, I have zone of elongation. Distal to zone of elongation, I have zone of growing point or zone of meristem. Okay, and zone of meristem is protected by the root cap. Okay, and this root cap is parenchymatous in nature. This is parenchymatous in nature. Okay, so this is about the different zones, and I repeat, I have already mentioned, but let me repeat that point. In case of hydrophytes, root cap is absent. Instead, it will have root pockets. Okay, and what is the difference between root cap and root pocket? If the root cap gets damaged, new root cap will be formed, but once the root pocket gets damaged, no root pocket will be formed. Okay, so this is one difference. Now let us try to understand about the second vegetative organ, that is the stem. Okay, we know root is descending part of the plant axis. So what about stem? Stem is ascending part of the plant axis. Root develops from the radicle of the embryo, whereas the stem develops from the plumule of the embryo. Okay, so let me write that point. Okay, so it develops from plumule. Okay, and the stem, it normally grows towards the sunlight, and that is why this is positively phototropic, and it grows away from the gravity, so this is negatively geotropic, and away from the water, so this is negatively hydrotropic. Okay, and the root will always have birds and always have nodes and internodes. It will always have nodes and internodes. So if I give you one structure, if I give you two different structures, okay, or suppose let me give you one structure which is underground. So if I ask you, tell me whether this structure is stem or root, how can you differentiate? How can you say, how can you confirm that okay, this is stem or this is root? For that, you have to look at the nodes and internodes. So if node and internodes are present, that means that will be stem. If they are absent, that means that will be root, because no underground root, or I can say no root has any kind of node and internodes, but all the stems, they have nodes and internodes, and that is why I will say how to differentiate the underground stem and the root. You have to look at the presence or absence of the nodes and internodes. Okay, so it may also have the birds. Okay, and the branching is exogenous. In case of root, the branching is endogenous, whereas in case of stem, the branching is exogenous. And let me tell you one more point here, very important. No doubt the lateral branches of the root, they are endogenous, but the root hairs, they are exogenous. This is very, very important. Okay, lateral roots, they are endogenous, whereas the root hairs are exogenous. Okay, what about the branching of stem? The branching of stem is exogenous. Okay, they will have birds, they will have nodes, internodes. Okay, now what about the functions? The stem also performs various functions, but the main function of the stem is to spread the branches, and the branch will have the flowers, it will have the leaves, it will have the fruits and seeds. Okay, so the main function of the stem is to spread the branches bearing the flowers, leaves, fruit and seeds. Okay, apart from this, this stem also performs some other functions, like it helps in conduction, that is transport of water and mineral from the root to the upper part of the plant, and it also helps in transport of the food from the leaf to the root. Okay, so this is another function of stem. What about the other functions? Some stems, not all stems, but some stems, they are involved in storage of food. Okay, they provide mechanical support, they help in providing protection, they may be involved in the vegetative propagation. Okay, so these are the functions which are performed by some stems. Okay, now let us try to understand the modified stems. So the modified stem can be underground, can be subaerial, or can be aerial. So what about the modified underground stem? Okay, so the examples are tuber, rhizome, corm, and bulb. Okay, tuber, whenever the term tuber or tuberous is there, you have to think that the stem will be, or the structure will be without any definite form. Okay, whether that is root or stem, it does not matter. If a structure does not have any definite form, you will call that structure as tuberous. Okay, so potato is a modified stem, and underground stem which does not have any definite shape. Okay, and that is why we call this as tuber. Okay, Mirabilis jalapa is also a tuber, and that is modified adventitious root. Okay, modified adventitious, sorry, Mirabilis jalapa modified taproot. Okay, what about sweet potato? That is modified adventitious root. And what about potato? That is modified stem, underground stem. And this potato has nodes, and those nodes are called as eyes, and in the eyes, that is in the nodes, it will have the axillary birds, and the axillary birds will grow to produce the new plants. Okay, so I will write one point, that in potato, the nodes which are present are called as eyes. Okay, and in the eyes, birds will be there, and which type of birds will be present? Axillary birds will be there, and these axillary birds will grow to produce the new plant. Okay, what about rhizome? What is the example of rhizome? Turmeric, ginger, they are the examples of rhizome. Corm, zaminkand, colocasia, alocasia, these are the examples of corm. Okay, and bulb is basically reduced disc-shaped underground stems. Okay, and they can be tunicated or they can be non-tunicated. If tunic is present, tunic means covering. Okay, tunic is basically membranous scaly leaf. If the membranous scaly leaf is present, that means that will be tunicated. If it is absent, that will be non-tunicated or scaly bulb, or it can be also called as naked bulb. And this tunicated bulb is also is further divided into two groups: simple tunicated bulb and compound tunicated bulb. Example of simple is onion, and example of compound bulb is garlic. Okay, so you have to remember these examples. You have to remember all these examples. Okay, and one more point, that all the underground modified stem, they have two functions. What are those functions? One functions I can write here, the functions of the modified underground stem is, one function is they help in storage of food. And the second function is they help the plant to survive the harsh condition, and that is called as perennation. So that is why I will call them all these structures as perinating structures. So they help in perennation. So all the underground modified stems, they are perinating structures. Okay, now what about the modified subaerial stems? Okay, the examples of modified subaerial stems are runner, offset, stolon, and sucker. These are the modified subaerial stems. One of the examples of runner is grasses. Okay, and in runner, the internode is long in nature. And the runner cannot overcome small obstacles. Why? Because the stem, they grow horizontally. Okay, so let me draw one diagram here. Okay, so suppose suppose this is the stem. Suppose this is the stem. Okay, so this is growing horizontally. This is growing horizontally. Okay, and suppose this is the node. Suppose this is the node, and these are the nodes. Okay, and from the node, leaves will be developed. So suppose this is the leaf. These are the leaves. These are the leaves. These are the leaves. Okay, and at the nodes, adventitious root will be developed. Which one will develop? Adventitious root will develop. So suppose these are the adventitious roots. These are the adventitious roots. Okay, so this is the runner. What about the stolon then? Stolon is more or less similar to the runner, but there is a difference. What is the difference? Let me tell you. So suppose this is the stem. This is the stem. Okay, and suppose this one is the node. This one is the node. Okay, and here I'm having a branch, or I'm having a stem. Okay, so suppose just a minute. Suppose this is this stem. Okay, and from the node branch will develop. Okay, why? Because at the node axillary bird will be there, and that axillary bird will grow to form new branch. Okay, so now this new branch will grow obliquely, and it will come back to the soil surface. So suppose this one is the soil surface. This one is soil surface. Okay, so here I am having the node. So this one is the node. Okay, and when the stem reaches or I can say touches the ground, what will happen? So this one is the node. Okay, and here what will happen? The new branch will develop. New branch will develop. Okay, and here again the new branch will develop like this, and it will again touch the soil surface. It will touch the soil surface. Okay, so this is soil surface like this. And so if you keep a small obstacle here, so suppose this is small obstacle. So what is happening? This stem is overcoming this small obstacle. Why? Because this stem is growing just like an arc. Because this stem is growing just like an arc, that is why this can overcome small obstacles. But in case of runner, this stem is growing horizontally. That is why this cannot overcome any small obstacle. Okay, and here what will be there? The leaves will be there. So these are the leaves. These are the leaves. Okay, and here also leaves will be there. So these are the basically branches. These are basically branches, and here also we will have the adventitious root. So these are adventitious root. Okay, like this. So what about offset? Offset is nothing but the runner found in aquatic plants. So we can call this as aquatic runners. These are aquatic runners, and the examples are very, very important. One is Eichhornia or Eichhornia, and second is Pistia. Eichhornia is called as water hyacinth, and Pistia is called as water lettuce. Okay, these are very, very important examples. Eichhornia is also known as terror of Bengal. Terror of Bengal. Okay, what about the examples of stolon? The examples of stolon are jasmine, mint, and strawberry, and the examples of sucker are banana, pineapple, and chrysanthemum. What about the sucker then? Let me draw the diagram. Okay, so suppose this is soil surface. Suppose this is soil surface. Okay, and suppose this one is the stem. This one is the stem. So this part is the underground stem. Okay, and from the underground stem, in the underground stem there will be node, and if there is node, obviously there will be birds. Okay, so suppose here there is a bird, and that bird will develop some branches, lateral branches. Okay, so here the lateral branch will develop now. What will develop? The lateral branch will develop. So now the lateral branch is developing. So initially it will grow horizontally, and later on it will grow obliquely, and it will ultimately come out of the soil surface. Okay, so how is it growing? Let me draw once again. So initially it is growing horizontally to some distance, then it will grow obliquely like this, and it will come out of the soil surface. And once it comes out of the soil surface, the leaves will also develop. So it will become a leafy shoot. It will become a leafy shoot, and this structure is called as sucker. This structure is called as sucker. Okay, so this was about sucker. Now what about so you can see what about the other structures? Okay, so modified aerial stem. So let me explain you the examples of modified aerial stem. So the modified aerial stems are meant for providing protection, and the example is thorn. What is thorn? Thorn is modified stem. And which part of the stem gets modified? It is the axillary bird. The entire stem does not get modified. The axillary bird present in the stem, that gets modified, and that structure is called as thorn. Okay, and its function is to provide protection to the plant against the grazing or browsing animals. Okay, so its function is to provide protection. Okay, and the examples are citrus and bougainvillea. Okay, and this you can see in this diagram. These are the thorns found in the citrus plant. Okay, and the aerial stems, they can also get modified to provide mechanical support. Okay, and the mechanical support providing a modified aerial stem, one of the examples is stem tendril. So whenever the term tendril is given, you have to think about some structures which are spiral in nature and which are meant for providing support to the plant body. Okay, they can develop from the leaf, they can develop from the stem, but if tendril is there, that means that will be responsible for providing mechanical support or strength to the plant body. If it develops from the stem, that will be called as stem tendril. It develops from the leaf, that will be called as leaf tendril. Okay, and the example of stem tendril is found in grapevine and gourds. Okay, gourds, for example, pumpkin, watermelon, and cucumber, like this. Okay, so in this diagram you can clearly see that this is the stem tendril. So this structure, you can see this structure which is spirally coiled, right? And this spirally coiled structure is nothing but the tendril, and this is going to help in providing mechanical support to the plant body. Okay, this helps in climbing of the plant structure. Okay, now, and one more thing, the stem tendril is also modified axillary bird. That means both thorn and the stem tendril, they are modified axillary birds. Okay, and in some cases, for example, in case of xerophytic plants, to reduce the transpiration, the leaves get modified to form the spines. Stem gets modified to form the thorns, and leaf gets modified to form the spines. So if the leaf gets modified to form the spine, then the function of the photosynthesis will be carried out by the stem, and the stem which gets modified to perform the function of photosynthesis, such stems will be called as phylloclate. Okay, so the phylloclate is a modified aerial stem which is meant for performing the function of photosynthesis. Why? Because in such plants, the leaf becomes modified to form the spines, and spines are non-photosynthetic. So the function of leaf will be now carried out by the stem, and such stems are called as phylloclate. Examples are Opuntia and Euphorbia. And you can see in this diagram clearly. Okay, you can see this is the Opuntia and that is the Euphorbia. Okay, you can see this is flat structure and that is cylindrical structure. Okay, so this is about the phylloclate. Okay, and there is another term which is called as cladode or cladophil. Phylloclate is the in case of phylloclate, the entire stem gets modified to perform photosynthesis, but in case of cladode or cladophil, a part of stem gets modified. Okay, this is one difference. Phylloclate shows unlimited growth, whereas cladode shows limited growth. Okay, in both the cases of phylloclate and cladophil, the stem gets modified to perform the function of photosynthesis, but in case of phylloclate, the entire stem will get modified, whereas in case of cladode or cladophil, a part of the stem will get modified. In phylloclate, the growth will be unlimited, but in case of cladode, the growth will be limited. Okay, and the examples are asparagus. Okay, ruscus, asparagus are the examples of what? Cladophil or cladode. Okay, so this was about the three different types of modification of stem: aerial modified stem, subaerial modified stem, and underground modified stem. And remember one thing, I have already told you, but let me repeat that point. All the modified underground stem, they are perinating structure. They allow the plant to survive the harsh or unfavorable condition. Okay, now let us talk about the third vegetative organ of the plant, and that organ is leaf. Which organ? Leaf. Okay, leaf is normally lateral structure, and they develop from the node and they originate from the shoot apical meristeme. They develop from the shoot apical meristeme, and this And stem also performs function of photosynthesis if the stem is young. But when the stem gets old or mature, in that case the stem becomes brown and non-photosynthetic. That means what I am trying to say is, apart from leaf, there are other structures which are also responsible for performing the function of photosynthesis, but the maximum amount of photosynthesis takes place in the leaf, and that is why I can say that leaf is the major structure of photosynthesis. Okay, so they develop at the nodes from the shoot apical meristem, and they are always arranged acropitally. What do you understand by acropital arrangement? The arrangement in which the young leaf will be present at the tip and the old leaf will be present towards the base. That is acropital. If the young structures are present towards the tip, that is acropital, and if the young structures are present towards the base, that will be called as basipetal. And the leaves are always arranged in acropital manner. They are always arranged in acropital manner. Okay, so what about the components of the components of a typical leaf? The typical leaf has three components. The lowermost component is the leaf base, and the leaf base is also called as hypopodium. What do you call this leaf base? You can call this as hypopodium. Okay, you can see this is the leaf. Okay, this is the stem and this is the node. Okay, and from this node the leaf has developed. Okay, and the structure of the leaf which is meant for attachment of the leaf with the stem at the node, that is called as leaf base. So this is the lowermost part of this leaf, and it helps in attachment of the leaf with the stem at the node, and this is called as hypopodium. Okay, and in some cases it can be swollen. In some cases it can form sheath. Okay, for example, in case of some legumes like Mimosa pudica, it is swollen, and such swollen leaf base are called as pulvinous. What do you call that as? Pulvinous. Okay, and in some monocots it will form the sheath, and that sheath will cover this stem either completely or partially. Okay, so I can say leaf base in legumes, in some legumes, not all legumes, in some legumes it is swollen, and such swollen leaf base is called as pulvinous. What do you call that as? Pulvinous. Okay, now the second part is the petiole. So this part is petiole, and this is the stalk of the leaf. Okay, and the uppermost part is called as leaf lamina or leaf blade. What do you call that as? Leaf lamina or leaf blade. So let me write here. So the petiole is called as mesopodium. Why? Because this is middle part of the leaf, and the lamina, which is also known as leaf blade, is called as what? Epipodium. Okay, and this lamina is the major site of photosynthesis in the leaf. Okay, and this is flat structure. This is normally flattened. Okay, and in the leaf lamina, we have a tip. Okay, so this part is called as apex. This part is called as apex of leaf lamina. Okay, and this part is called as margin of leaf lamina. This is margin of leaf lamina. Okay, so let me repeat. So this part is tip of leaf lamina. Okay, this part is margin of leaf lamina. And this leaf lamina contains what? Midrib. So this structure is midrib, which is also known as principal vein. Okay, and this one is the lateral vein. Okay, and this is veinlet. Okay, so it has midrib, lateral vein, and veinlet. Okay, and all these structures, they are collectively called as their arrangement is called as venation. The arrangement of midrib and its branches is called as what? Is called as venation. Okay, and all the structures, whether the structure is midrib or principal vein, or you can say lateral vein or veinlets, they will have what? Vascular tissues. Okay, so if they have vascular tissue, their function is to conduct the materials. Their function is to conduct the material. Okay, from the stem, from the root, water minerals will be absorbed and they will reach to the stem, and from the stem they will reach to the lamina. Okay, and in the lamina, food is synthesized, and that food will be transported through the through these phloem present in these structures, and they will come to the petiole, and they will come to the leaf base, and finally they will come to the stem, and they will reach to the other parts of the plant. Okay. So what about the structure function of these structures? That is principal vein, lateral veins. The function of these structures is to conduct different chemicals. What about the other function? They provide mechanical strength to the leaf lamina. Why? Because the leaf is very thin structure, but still it exists in flat. It exists as a flat structure. How is it possible? Because these structures, they act as skeleton. They act as a skeleton. Okay. So let me write here. So this lamina has what? Principal vein. Okay, principal vein is also known as midrib. What do you call this as? Midrib. Okay, and it has lateral vein. Lateral vein. Okay, and this ultimate branch is called as veinlet. What do you call that as? Veinlet. Okay, and all these structures, they have vascular tissue. They have vascular tissue. Okay, and they are meant for providing they act as cytoskeleton. So I will say they act as cytoskeleton. They act as cytoskeleton. That means they provide rigidity to the leaf lamina. They are responsible for providing rigidity to the leaf lamina. Now, one more thing. At the leaf base, some leaf-like structures will be present, and they are called as stipules. And the bud will be present, and that bud will be called as axillary bird. Okay, so let me draw that diagram here. Okay, so suppose this is the leaf-like structure, and what do you call this leaf-like structure? You call them as stipules. Okay, and apart from that, here what will be present? Bud will be there. So suppose this is the bud. This is the bud, and this bud is called as axillary bird. Okay, so how many stipules are there? 2 stipules are there per leaf base. Okay, and axillary birds will be there. Axillary bird is also present. Okay, now one more point. I have written here the leaf base of simple leaf as well as compound leaf. Whether the leaf is simple or compound, it does not matter. But if I talk about the leaf base that will have stipule and that will have axillary birds. Okay, all types of leaves, whether the leaf is simple leaf or compound leaf, if I am talking about the leaf base, then I will find the stipule and axillary bird in the leaf base. But at the base of the leaflets of the compound leaves, base of what? Leaflets, not leaf base. This is base of leaflet. That will not have axillary bird, that will not have stipule, but that will have the stiples. So this is one difference. Leaf base of simple and compound leaf, they have stipule as well as axillary bird, but base of leaflets of compound leaf, that will not have stipule, not have axillary bird, but that will have stipule. That is very, very important. Okay, now let us talk about the types of leaves. So how can I classify the leaves? We can classify the leaves on the basis of the presence or absence of the incision in the leaf lamina. Okay, so you may ask me, sir, what is incision in leaf lamina? So here in this diagram you can see, there is some inward growth. Okay, and this invaginations are called as incision. Okay, so in this diagram you can clearly see there are some invaginations like this. Okay, for example, if I draw like this, so this will be like this, right? So these are invaginations, or I can call them as what? Incision. So if incision is present, then incision is present and not complete, that will be simple leaf, and if incision is present but complete, that will be called as compound leaf. So what do you mean by complete incision and incomplete incision? If the incision does not touch the midrib, the incision will be called as incomplete incision. And if this incision touches the midrib, then it will produce the leaflets. Okay, and that leaf will be called as compound leaf. Okay, so how do we classify the leaf? We classify the leaf on the basis of presence and the nature of incision. Okay, so in case of simple leaf, the incision in case of simple leaf, the incision in the lamina is either absent, or if present, that will be complete, that will be incomplete. And in case of compound leaf, incisions are present and they're complete. That means the incisions, they touch the midrib and they produce leaflets. So here, if the incision is complete, that means leaflets are produced. Leaflets are produced, or leaflets are formed. What are formed? Leaflets are formed. Okay, and the compound leaf is of two types: pinnately compound leaf and palmately compound leaf. Pinnately compound leaf and palmately compound leaf. So what is the difference between pinnately compound leaf and palmately compound leaf? In case of pinnately compound leaf, the leaflets are arranged on either side of the midrib or on the branches of the midrib. Whereas in the palmately compound leaf, the leaflets are not arranged on the either side of the midrib. Rather, they are arranged on the tip of the petiole. Okay, so this is one difference. So let me give you some examples so you can clearly see in this diagram. So these are the pinnately compound leaves. Okay, so this is unipinnate. These are unipinnately compound leaf. This is bipinnate compound leaf. This is tripinnate, and this is decompound. Okay, so how do I classify these leaves as unipinnate, bipinnate? Okay, so this is the midrib. And initially the leaf was like this. Okay, and what happened here in this area? The incision took place. In this area, incision took place, and the incision, they touched the midrib, and because they touched the midrib, that is why this entire leaf lamina, which was actually a single lamina, that got divided into a number of small fragments, and now these small fragments are called as leaflets. And this entire structure is one compound leaf. Okay, and this structure is midrib or principal vein. Okay, so if the leaflets are arranged on the either side of the midrib, that is called as unipinnately compound leaf. Okay, and this unipinnately compound leaf is again of two types. In this case, the number of leaflets is odd one, but here the number of leaflet is even one. So if odd number of leaflets are present, we call that as imperipinnate, and if even number of leaflets are present, that is called as peripinnate. Okay, so here I will say number of leaflets, right? So in this case, the number of leaflets is odd number, and in this case the number of leaflets is even in case of peripinnate. Okay, and if the leaflets, they develop from the branches of the midrib. Okay, so here you can see this is the midrib. Okay, this is the branch of the midrib. And on the branch of the midrib, the leaflets are arranged. And that this is called as bipinnate. I can draw one diagram here. Suppose this is the midrib. This is the branch of midrib. And in this case, now the leaflets are present. Here the leaflets are present. This is called as bipinnate. Okay, and what is tripinnate? So suppose this is midrib. Okay, this is the branch of midrib. So this is primary axis. Okay, this midrib is called as primary axis. So I will call this one as primary axis. I will call this one as primary axis. This is primary axis. Okay, this is secondary axis, and this is tertiary axis. So in this case, the leaflets, they develop at the tertiary axis. Where they develop at the tertiary axis. Okay, so this is primary axis. If leaflets develop at the primary axis, that is midrib, unipinnate. If they develop at the secondary axis, okay, so I can write here, this is primary axis, that is midrib, this is secondary axis. So if the leaflets develop at the secondary axis, bipinnate, primary axis, unipinnate. If they develop at the tertiary axis, that will be tripinnate. That will be tripinnate. So this one is primary axis, okay, and this one is secondary axis, and this one is tertiary axis. And if the leaflets they develop at the branches beyond the tertiary axis, that is called as decompound, and the example is coriander. The example is coriander. Okay, so in this case you can clearly see that all of these are pinnately compound leaves, and in all these cases the leaflets they develop at the either side of the midrib, that is primary axis, or the branches of the primary axis. Okay, what about the palmately compound leaf? The palmately compound leaf, the leaflets are present at the tip of the petiole. Okay, so you can see this is the petiole, this is the petiole. Okay, this is the petiole, these are the petioles. Okay, and depending upon the number of leaflets, the palmately compound leaf can be classified. So if one leaflet is present, unifoliate. If two leaflets are present, bifoliate. If three leaflets are present, trifoliate. If four leaflets are present, quadrifoliate. And if more than four leaflets are present, that is called as multifoliate. That is called as multifoliate. Okay, so this is about the palmately compound leaf. So what is the difference? In case of palmately compound leaf, the leaflets develop at the tip of the, this is the tip of the petiole. This part is petiole, this part is petiole, and this is the tip of petiole. So at the tip of petiole, leaflets are developing. Okay, but in case of pinnately compound leaf, the leaflets develop at the either side of the primary axis or the branches of the primary axis. Fine. So this was about types of leaves. Now what about the venation? Venation is nothing but the arrangement of, okay, so this is venation. So I can say this is example of what? Parallel venation, and this is example of reticulate venation. Reticulate venation. So what do you understand by venation? Venation is basically the arrangement of what? Midrib, okay, and lateral brain and lateral veins. So how they are arranged? That is called as venation. It is of two types, parallel venation and reticulate venation. You can see these are the lateral veins and they are running parallelly. So this is called as parallel venation. Okay, and in this case you can see, so these are the lateral veins. Okay, and the lateral veins, they are undergoing further branching. To form the veinlets, and because the veinlets form the network, that is why this is called as reticulate. And the reticulate venation is a feature of dicot, whereas parallel venation is a feature of monocot. Okay, in parallel venation, veinlets are absent, but in case of reticulate venation, veinlets are present, and the presence of veinlet forms the network. Okay, and for network we use the term reticulum, and that is why this is called as reticulate venation. This is the feature of dicot, this is the feature of monocot, but there are few exceptions. And let me tell you the exceptions here. Okay, monocots with reticulate venation. To remember this, you can remember using this trick. Mr. Sidas. M for monocots, R for reticulate. Sidas are the examples of monocot having reticulate venation. Okay, C for colocasia, D for Dioscorea, A for alocasia, S for smilex. DPCCE. Okay, that means dicot with parallel venation, and the examples are CCE, Corymbium, Calophyllum, and Eryngium. Okay, so these are the examples you can remember. Okay, now let us try to understand about the modification of leaf. The main function of the leaf is to perform photosynthesis. Okay, it also helps in gaseous exchange. It also helps in gaseous exchange as well as transpiration. And the gaseous exchange and the transpiration, they take place through the stomata. Okay, but in some cases, apart from performing the function of gaseous exchange, transpiration, and photosynthesis, the leaves are meant to perform some additional functions, and to do so they get modified. And the more examples of modified leaves are spine, leaf tendrils, storage of food, phylloid, and leaf pitcher. Okay, so what is spine? Spine is a pointed structure, okay, and that is modified leaf. Thorn is also a pointed structure, and that is modified stem. and this is modified leaf, and this is found in plants like aloe and cactus. Okay, leaf tendril is a spiral structure which is meant for providing support to the plant. Okay, and this is found in pea and sweet pea, and in some plants the leaf gets fleshy, becomes fleshy, and it helps in storage of food, and the examples are onion and garlic. So the white part which we eat during the white part which we eat from the garlic or the onion, they are basically modified leaves, and they are called as fleshy scale leaves. Fleshy scale leaves. And whenever I use the term fleshy, that means that will have food, that will have stored food. And phyllodes. What is phyllodes? In case of Australian acacia, the petiole becomes swollen and that green, and it performs the function of photosynthesis. And such modified petiole which is meant for photosynthesis, that is called as phyllodes. Phylloclate is modified stem to perform photosynthesis. This is modified petiole to perform photosynthesis. I repeat, phylloclate is modified stem, phyllodes is modified petiole, and petiole is a part of leaf, so I can call this as modified leaf. And both are meant for performing the function of photosynthesis. Clear? And in some cases, some plants which grow in areas where the amount of nitrogen in the soil is very less, so those plants, they meet the requirement of the nitrogen by digesting the insects, and to trap the insects, the leaf may be modified, and such plants will have leaf pitchers. Okay, and the example is Nepenthes, and you can clearly see that this is the leaf pitcher. This is the leaf pitcher, and once the insect enters into the leaf pitcher, what will happen? That will undergo digestion, and after digestion, after digestion, the nitrogen content will be absorbed by the plant, and that will be used by the plant. Okay, so this is leaf pitcher. So this is found in insectivorous plant, where in case of insectivorous plant, we all of us know very well, insects are rich in protein, and protein are nitrogen rich. Okay, and these plants grow in soil where the nitrogen content is very, very less, and to meet the requirement of nitrogen, they digest they trap and digest the nitrogen, insect. Okay, and when the insects, they get digested, they from the digested particles of the insect, they will use the nitrogen. Okay, and this is the tendril. Okay, and this is leaf tendril. This is leaf tendril. So this is spiral structure, and these are basically leaf tendrils. Okay, so I can write here, this is leaf pitcher in Nepenthes plant, and this is leaf tendril. This is leaf tendril. Okay, now let us talk about the arrangement of leaves, and the arrangement of leaves on the stem or the branch of stem is called as phyllotaxy. Arrangement of leaves on stem or branch of stem is called as phyllotaxy, and the phyllotaxy is of three types. If this is the node, okay, and this is leaf. So in this diagram, you can clearly see that at one node, one leaf is present, and this type of phyllotaxy is called as alternate. And in this case, at one node, two leaves are present, that is called as opposite. And in this case, more than two leaves are present at one node, and that is called as whorled phyllotaxy. And the examples are given, you have to remember. Okay, now what about flower? Okay, what about flower? But before discussing flower, let me tell you one term, and that is shoot. What is the term? The term is shoot. So what do you understand by shoot? What is the difference between stem and shoot? Stem plus leaves, or the branch of stem plus leaves, that is called as shoot. Okay, so stem plus leaf or the branch of stem plus leaf, that is shoot. Okay, so the flower is a shoot, and this is a modified shoot, and this is meant for reproduction, and that is why we call this as flower as modified reproductive shoot. What do you call this flower? We call this as modified reproductive shoot, and this is the site where sexual reproduction takes place. And this is the stalk of the flower, and the stalk of the flower is called as pedicel. It is called as pedicel, and it is not necessary that all the flower will have pedicel. The flower may have pedicel or may not have pedicel. If pedicel is present, that will be called as pedicellate flower. If absent, sessile flower. If absent, sessile flower. Okay, and at the base of the pedicel, leaf-like structures will be present and they are called as bract. Okay, at the base of the leaf, the leaf-like structures present are called as stipules, and here the structures are called as bract. Okay, and the flower has floral walls. Okay, and the floral walls are basically group of leaves, floral leaves. Okay, and they are classified into two groups. One is essential or reproductive floral wall, and second one is non-essential or accessory or non-reproductive floral wall. Okay, and the non-reproductive floral walls, they are responsible for providing protection to the essential floral walls. Actually, the essential floral walls, they lie on the inner side of the flower, and they are protected on outer side by the non-essential floral walls. And apart from providing protection to the essential floral walls, these non-essential floral walls, they are also involved in the pollination, and especially it is the corolla. It is the corolla. Okay, and the non-essential floral walls are of two types. One is calyx and another is corolla, and the unit of calyx is sepal, the unit of corolla is petal. Okay, and the essential floral walls, they participate in sexual reproduction. Okay, and the examples are androecium and gynoecium. The unit of androecium is stamen, the unit of gynoecium is carpel, and the carpel is also known as pistil. Okay, so this is about the floral walls. Okay, now let us try to understand all these floral parts one by one. So in this diagram, you can clearly see this is the receptacle. This is the receptacle, and the receptacle is nothing but the thalamus. This receptacle is nothing but the thalamus, at which the different parts of the floral walls are attached. Okay, so this is the carpel. Okay, and this part is the style. This is the this part is the style. Okay, this part is the stigma, and this part is the ovary. This part is the ovary. Okay, and this structure is stamen. Okay, and this structure is the petal, and this structure is the sepal. So all these sepals, they collectively form the calyx. All the petals, they collectively form the corolla. All the stamens, they collectively form the androecium, and all the carpels, they collectively form the gynoecium. They form the gynoecium, and different types of floral leaves, they are arranged on the receptacle, that is the thalamus. Okay, so this is the different parts of flower. So let us try to understand all these parts one by one. Okay, so as I have told you that the non-essential floral walls are calyx and corolla. Calyx is the outermost floral wall, corolla is the inner floral wall. Okay, and the calyx is normally green, so it normally helps in normally it is photosynthetic, but in some cases the calyx is also calyx can be bright colored, and if it is bright in color, it will help in pollination. Okay, what about the corolla? Corolla is normally bright in color, so normally it helps in pollination, and in some cases it can be green in color. So if it is green, it will help in photosynthesis. Okay, and the sepals in the calyx, they can be free or they can be fused, and if they are free, that condition is called as apocarpus polysepalous. Okay, let me write that part here. One by one. Calyx, this is the outermost floral wall. This is outermost floral wall. Okay, and the units of the calyx are called as what? Sepals. The units of the calyx are called as sepals. Okay, and the sepals are normally, they can be green or can be bright in color, and if they are bright in color, they will help in pollination, and if they are green in color, they will help in photosynthesis, and normally they are green in color. And per flower, the number of I will say the number of the sepals per flower can be 0 or can be 1 or can be more than 1. And if the number of sepals, or I can say this 0 or 1 or more than 1, and if more than 1 sepals are present, so we have two conditions. One condition is where the sepals will be free, so free sepals will be there, and another condition where the sepals will be fused, so fused sepals will be there. And if the sepals are free, we call that condition as polysepalous, and if they are fused, we call that condition as gamosepalous. We call that condition as gamosepalous condition. Okay, so this was about the calyx. This is about the calyx. What about the corolla? What about the corolla then? Let me explain you that part also. Corolla lies inner to the calyx. Corolla lies inner to the calyx. So I can say this. I can say that corolla is the second outermost floral wall. This lies inner to calyx. This lies inner to calyx. Okay, and the unit of corolla is called as petal. Okay, and what about the petal? Petal can also be green or bright in color, but normally it is bright in color. Okay, sepals are normally green in color, whereas petals are normally bright in color. And whenever the structure, whether the structure is sepal or petal, if they are green, they will perform photosynthesis. If they are bright in color, they will help in pollination. And what about the number of these structures? The number of the petals per flower can be 0, can be 1, or more than 1. And if they are more than 1, then there are two possibilities. One possibility is that the petals will be free, so free petals will be there, or the petals may be fused, so fused petals may also be present. And the free petals are called, that condition is called as polypetalous condition. Okay, and the fused petals are called as gamopetalous condition. Gamopetalous condition. Okay, gamopetalous condition. So this was about what? Corolla. And both calyx and corolla, they are accessory, so they do not participate in reproduction, but they provide protection to the reproductive organs. Okay, now in some plants, the calyx and corolla are not distinct, and if the calyx and corolla, they are not distinct, we call them as perianth. So what is perianth? Indistinct calyx and corolla. And they're found in families like Liliaceae and Poaceae, and both are monocots. And the units of the perianth are called as tepal. Units of corolla is petal. Units of perianth is tepal. That is petal. This is tepal. Okay. And what about tepal? Tepal can be now let me tell you about the number of tepals. Okay. So I can say the tepals, they can show the tepals present in a flower, they can be the tepals in a flower, they can be free or they can be fused. And if the tepals present in a flower, they are free, we call that condition as polytepalous condition. Okay, and this polytepalous condition is also known as polyphylous condition. What do you call that condition? Polyphylous condition. Okay, whereas the tepals, when they are fused with each other, that condition is called as gamotepalous condition. Okay, or gamophylous condition. So whenever the prefix gamo is there or syn is there, you have to consider the structures will be fused. And if they are if the prefix poly is there or apo is there, you have to consider that these structures will be free from each other. So let me write that part. Okay, so prefixes and condition. Okay, so if I use the prefix like gamo or syn, in both these cases the structures will be fused. Okay, and if I use the prefix like poly or apo, in that cases the structures will be free. So if I say apocarpus, that means carpels will be free. If I say gamocarpus, gamocarpus condition, that sorry, syncarpus, not gamocarpus, syncarpus, that means the carpels are fused. Apocarpus means carpel are free, syncarpus means carpels are fused. Gamosepalus means sepals are fused, and polysepalus means sepals are free. Okay, so these are the prefixes you have to remember. Okay, now what about the arrangement of the sepals, petals or tepals, or the in case of flower? Okay, so the arrangement of these structures when the flower is present in bud condition, that arrangement is called as estivation. The arrangement of sepals, or the arrangement of petals or the arrangement of tepals in bud condition, not in mature flower condition, in bud condition, that is known as estivation. And the estivation is of various types. So you can see this is the estivation. Okay, and this part is margin and this part is also margin. This is one structure. Okay, and this is the this is the margin and this is the margin. This is margin and this is also margin. So you in this diagram you can clearly see that the margins are not overlapping. They are not overlapping. They can just touch with each other, but they are not overlapping. And such estivation is called as valvate estivation. The estivation in which the margin of sepals or petals, they do not overlap with each other, rather they just touch each other. That condition is called as valvate estivation. What about twisted? In case of twisted, there will be overlapping. There will be overlapping in a particular direction, in an orderly way. Okay, so you can see this margin is overlapping this margin is overlapping this margin is overlapping this margin. So here you can see one margin of one sepal is overlapping the margin of another sepal, and this type of estivation is called as twisted estivation. Here also the margins are overlapping each other, but there is some difference. What is the difference? This structure is completely inner side, and this is not overlapping any other structure, but this is overlapped by this one and this one. Okay, this structure is not overlapping anyone, but this structure is overlapping this one, and this is overlapped by this one. Okay, and this margin is overlapped by this one. Okay, and this margin is overlapped by this one. Okay, but this margin is not but this structure is not overlapped by any other structure. So that is why I can call this structure as completely inner, this as completely outer. I can call this as completely outer, and this is completely inner. Okay, and this one is overlapping, and this one as overlapping, and this one as overlapping, right? And such arrangement is called as imbricate estivation. Okay, and here this is completely outer because this is not overlapped by any other. Okay, this is completely inner, this is completely inner. Okay, this is overlapped, this is overlapped, this is completely outer. Okay, and this is completely inner. And this type of arrangement of these sepals is called as quinquential type. And here this is one petal, this is one petal. Okay, one petal, and in the this single petal is covering surrounding these two small petals, and this petal is called as standard. This petal is called as standard, and this is also called as vexillum. This is also called as vexillum. Okay, this is also called as vexillum, and this vexillum is covering the two lateral smaller petals, and these petals are called as what? Wings. What do we call them as? Wings. And what is the number of wings? The number of wings is 2, and they are free. What about the number of standard? 1 standard is present. Okay, and these two structures, they are just a minute. Okay, sorry. And these two structures they are called as keel, or they can be called as carina. Okay, and these structures are also 2 in number, and they are fused. Okay, so this is indicating about their fusion. Okay, so these structures are they are fused, keels are fused. Okay, whereas the wings are free. The wings are free. The wings are free. Okay, and this type of estivation is called as what? Estivation is called as vexillary estivation, and this is found in pea plant. Okay, so if the margins they just touch with each other without any overlapping, that is called as valvate. If they overlap with each other in a particular sequence, that is called as twisted. If there is no specific order, but there is overlapping, that is called as imbricate. And one of the modification of the imbricate estivation is quinquensal. And in standard estivation, one large petal will be covering the smaller two petals which are free from each other, and this smaller one will further enclose the or surround the smallest petals, and they are called as keels. Okay, so standard is 1. Okay, and the wings are present, the number of wings are 2 and they are free, and the keels are 2 and they are fused with each other. This is vexillary estivation. This is the feature of Fabaceae family, and the example of Fabaceae family is pea plant. Okay, this is about the estivation. So what is estivation? Estivation is the arrangement of sepals or arrangement of petals or the tepals in bud condition, that is called as estivation. Okay, now let us talk about the stamen. Stamen is the reproductive structure, and this is the male reproductive structure. This is called as male sex organ, and this is also called as microsporophyll. Why? Because this has microsporangium. This has microsporangium. Okay, and the stamen is the reproductive structure, but sometimes this stamen is sterile or underdeveloped. So those stamens which are underdeveloped or sterile, they are called as staminode. Okay, and the stamen has two different components. One component is the stalk, and the stalk is called as filament. The stalk is called as filament. Okay, and the filament will bear the anther. So this structure is anther, and this anther has two lobes. So this is one lobe and this is another lobe, and each lobe there will be sac, and that sac will have pollen grains, so that is called as pollen sac. And the pollen sac was previously microsporangium, so it will have 4 microsporangium. How many? 4 microsporangia will be there. Okay, so these structures are basically pollen sac, and pollen sac is also known as microsporangium. So in a typical anther, how many microsporangia are there? 4 microsporangia are there, and that is why such anther is called as tetrasporangiate. But in some cases, one lobe will be there and one lobe is there. If one lobe is there, that means there will be 2 pollen sac or 2 microsporangium, and such condition will be called as bisporangiate. Okay, so this is the structure of what? This is the structure of the stamen. So this is stamen. This is the structure of stamen. Okay, and the stamens, they can be absent in a flower or they can be present, and if they are present, their number can be 1 or more than 1, and if the number is more than 1, they can either be free or fused. Okay, and if the stamen are fused, then the fusion of stamen can be of cohesion type or adhesion type. In cohesion type, one stamen will fuse with other stamens, and in adhesion, the stamen will fuse either with petal or either with tepal. And if the stamen fuses with petal, that condition is called as epipetalous, and if the stamen fuses with tepal, that condition is called as epitepalous or epiphyllous. Okay, epitepalous or epiphyllous. Epipetalous condition is observed in Solanaceae. Epitepalous condition is observed in Liliaceae family. Okay, I repeat, if the stamens are present, they can be 1 or more than 1 in a flower, and if the number is more than 1, then they can be either free or fused, and the fusion of stamen can be of 2 types, cohesion and adhesion. If stamen fuses with stamen, cohesion. If stamen fuses with other structures like tepal or petal, that is called as adhesion. If it fuses with petal, that is epipetalous. If fuses with tepal, that is called as epitepalous condition. Epitepalous condition is observed in Liliaceae family, whereas the epipetalous condition is observed in Solanaceae family. Okay, now let us talk about the different types of fusion in stamen. Okay, so these are the different conditions. Okay, so in case of Adelphi, filaments are fused but the anthers are free. Okay, so if the filaments of the stamens they fuse and the anthers are free, that condition is called as adelphi. And when the filaments fuse with each other, they may form one bundle or two bundles or more than two bundles. So if they form one bundle, that will be called as monoadelphous condition. If they form two bundles, that will be called as diadelphous. If they form three bundles, that will be called as triadelphous condition, etc., etc. Okay. And in case of syngeny, the filaments of the stamens, they are free, whereas the anthers will be fused. Okay, and such condition is called as syngeny. Okay, so let me draw the diagram here. So suppose this is one filament, this is another filament, this is another filament. So like this, these are the filaments, and the filaments are fused with each other. And suppose these are the anthers. The filaments have fused with each other. Okay, now let me draw the anther. Okay, so these are the anthers. So you can see the anthers are free, but the filaments are fused, and this condition is called as adelphi condition. Okay, one bundle is formed, so this is monoadelphous condition. If two bundles will form diadelphous, so on. What about syngeny? So suppose these are the anthers. And these are the filaments. And you can see the filaments are free, but the anthers are fused, and this condition is called as syngeny. And if both are fused, that will be called as synandry condition. And if both are free, that will be called as polyandrous condition. Okay, and all these three conditions, they come under the cohesion, because here one stamen is fusing with other stamen. So all of these three come under the cohesion. Okay, and this is the free condition, where both the filaments and the anthers, they are free from each other. Okay, so this is about the cohesion, the fusion of the stamens. Now let us talk about the last structure of the flower, and the structure is the carpel. Carpel is the female sex organ, and because this has the megasporangium, that is why we call this as what? Megasporophyll. And the megasporangium is nothing but the megasporangium is a part of ovule. Why? Because ovule is nothing but the integumented megasporangium. So because this carpel has megasporangium, that is why this is called as megasporophyll. Okay, now the number of carpels in a flower can be 0 or 1 or more than 1, and if the number of carpel is more than 1, they can either be free or fused, and if they are free, we call that condition as apocarpus. If they are fused, we call that condition as syncarpus. So this is a carpel, and we can also call carpel as pistil. So the carpel has three components. The uppermost part, where the pollen grains land, that part is called as stigma. Okay, this is the landing platform for pollen grains. The stalk is called as style. This can be solid, semi-solid, or hollow. Okay, and the lowermost swollen part is called as ovary, and in ovary chambers are present. Okay, chambers are present, and here I have drawn two chambers, and those chambers are called as locule. And inside the chamber there will be cushion-like structures which are made of parenchymatous tissue, and these cushion-like structures, they are called as placenta. What do you call these structures? We call these structures as placenta. So this is placenta. This structure is placenta, and on the placenta ovules will develop. What will develop? The ovules will develop. So here I am going to draw the ovule. And the number of ovule in a locule can be 1 or more than 1. So I can write here in the ovary chambers are there. What is present? Chambers are there, and the chambers are called as locule. Okay, and the number of chambers can be 1 or more than 1. So I can write the chamber can be 1 or more than 1 in number. So if 1, unilocular; if 2, bilocular; if 3, trilocular; if more than 3, multilocular condition. And the chamber will have, or the locule will have what? A locule will have the placenta. Okay, and on the placenta, what are developed? The ovules are developed, and the number of ovules can be 1 or more than 1. Okay, and inside the ovule, embryo sac is present. What is present? Embryo sac is present, and embryo sac will have the egg, and this egg is basically female gamete. The egg is basically female gamete. Okay, so this is the structure of carpel. Okay, now in the carpel, what is present? The ovules are present. So the arrangement of ovules on the placenta inside the ovary is called as placentation. What is placentation? The arrangement of the ovules on the placenta in the ovary, that is called as placentation, and the placentation is of various types: marginal and the axial, then where parietal, free central, and the basal type. Okay, so in case of marginal placentation, the placenta is present at the margin. Okay, and from the placenta the ovules will develop. So these are the ovules. Okay, and this is found in the plant like pea. Okay, and what about the axial? So see, here we have the central axis. So suppose this is the central axis, and around the central axis there will be placenta. So suppose let me draw here. Okay, so suppose this is the central, suppose this is the ovary. Okay, and suppose this is central axis. Around the central axis, what will be there? The placenta will be there. So suppose this is the placenta. Okay, and here I'm going to draw the ovules. So suppose this is ovule. These are the ovules. Okay, central axis, placenta. Okay, these are the ovules, and here there will be septum. So these are the septum. So this is one chamber, this is another chamber, this is another chamber. So this is trilocular condition, and this is called as axial placentation. What do you call this as? Axial placentation. Okay, this is placenta. So this is the septum. Okay, and this one is the locule. Okay, and this one is the ovule. Okay, and this one is the central axis. Okay, and this one is the placenta. Okay, and this type of placentation is called as axial placentation. What about free central? This is more or less similar to the axial placentation. So let me draw the diagram here. Okay, so this is the ovary, and let me draw the central axis. So this is the central axis. Around the central axis I have to draw the placenta. So this is the placenta. Okay, so let me label them. So this is placenta. Okay, and this is the central axis. Okay, and here the ovules will be there. Okay, so these are the ovules. And in this case there is no septum. Okay, and if septum is not present, so there will be one chamber, one locule. So here I have only one locule. This is locule. Because of the absence of septum, there is a single chamber. So I will call this as unilocular condition. This is trilocular condition, and this type of placentation is called as precentral placentation. So the difference is, in case of precentral there is no septum. In case of axial placentation there is septum. Okay, what about the parallel placentation? So in case of parallel placentation, so suppose this is the ovary. Okay, and here I'm going to draw the placenta. Okay, so the placenta are present on the periphery. Okay, and here the ovules will be there. So this is the ovule, so these are the ovules. Okay, so this is parietal placentation. Okay, and in some cases what happens? Septum will develop. Okay, so this is the septum, and this septum is called as false septum, and the false septum is called as rhaplum. What do you call this as? Rhaplum. So what is rhaplum? Rhaplum is the false septum. And now this is one chamber, this is another chamber. So bilocular condition. Which condition? Bilocular condition. Initially there will be no septum, there will be no rhaplum, so that will be unilocular. But at maturity what will happen? False septum, that is rhaplum, will produce. That will divide the ovary into two chambers. One will, and that is why that will be bilocular. What about the what about the basal type? So in case of basal type, so suppose this is the ovary. Okay, so this is the parietal type. This is parietal type. What about basal type? So in case of basal type, suppose this is the ovary. Okay, and on the base of the ovary there will be placenta, and on the placenta there will be ovule. So this is called as basal placentation. This is called as basal placentation. So this is all about the placentation. So the arrangement of the ovules on placenta in the ovary, that is called as placentation. Okay, now let us try to understand about the types of ovary. Okay, so based on the position of ovary with respect to other floral walls, we can classify the ovary into three types: superior ovary, inferior ovary, and half inferior. Okay, so if the ovary is present above the point from where the other floral parts develop, that is called as superior ovary. If the ovary develops from a point from where if the ovary lies above the point from where other parts other floral parts develop, that is called as superior ovary. So let me draw the diagram so that you can understand. Okay, so suppose this is the ovary. Okay, and from a point below the ovary, these sepals are going to develop. Okay, so the sepals, petals are going to develop. So suppose this is the sepal. Sepals are developing. Okay, petals are also developing. So these are the petals. So they are developing from a point below the ovary. Okay, and let me draw the stamen here. Okay, so this condition is called as superior ovary. Why? Because the ovary is present above the point from where the other parts are developing. This is superior ovary. Okay, and if the let me draw another diagram. So suppose this is the thalamus. Okay, and suppose this is the ovary. So you can see the thalamus is completely fused. This thalamus is completely fused with what? With the ovary. So this is the thalamus. This is the thalamus. Like this. This is completely fused with what? So suppose this is ovary and this is the thalamus, which is completely fused with what? Ovary. Okay, like this. Okay, and from here sepals, petals will be developing. Okay, so here sepal will be there. So this is sepal. Okay, and these are the petals. Okay, and here what will be there? Stamen will be there. So suppose this is the stamen, like this. Okay, and let me draw the style and other part also. So this is the style and this is the stigma. Okay, here also this is the style and this is the stigma. Okay, and this condition, in this case you can see the ovary is below the point from where the other parts are developing, and that is why this ovary is called as inferior ovary. So this is superior ovary and this is inferior ovary. Okay, and the plant and the flower having inferior ovary is called as epigynous flower. And the flower having superior ovary is called as hypogynous flower. Okay, and the other condition in which the other structures like sepal, petal, and stamen, they lie more or less at the same level of the ovary, that is called as what? That is called as half inferior ovary, or the flower will be called as perigynous flower, and you have to remember the example. Okay, so this is about the types of ovary. Ovaries are of three types: superior ovary, inferior ovary, and half inferior ovary. Okay, now let us try to understand the types of flowers. Okay, so how can we classify flowers? So we can use different criteria to classify flowers. One is on the basis of sexuality. Okay, so if both sex organs, that is semen and carpel, are present in a flower, that will be called as bisexual, and such flowers are also called as hermaphrodite flower. Okay, and in some cases either male sex organ or female sex organ will be present. Accordingly, we can classify them as male flower or female flower. So in case of male flower, only stamens will be present, carpels will not be there. So male flowers are also called as staminate flower. In case of female flowers, stamen will not be there, only pistil, that is carpel, will be there, and such flowers are called as pistillate flowers. So unisexual flower are of two types, staminate and pistillate, whereas bisexual flower is called as hermaphrodite flowers. Okay, so on the basis of the nature of these sex organs, we can classify flower as unisexual or bisexual. We can also classify flowers on the basis of their symmetry. If a flower can be divided into two equal halves in any radial plane, that is called as actinomorphic. Okay, and the example is mustard, datura, and chili. And if the flower can be classified into two equal halves in longitudinal plane, that is called as zygomorphic, or that will have the bilateral symmetry, and the examples are pea, gulmohar, bean, and cassia. And if a flower cannot be divided into two equal halves in any plane, that is called as asymmetric or irregular flower. Asymmetric or irregular flower. If it can be divided into two equal halves in any radial plane, actinomorphic; in one longitudinal plane, that is zygomorphic. If it cannot be divided into two equal halves, that is asymmetric or irregular, and the example is canna. These examples are very, very, very important. Okay, now let us talk about the other type of classification of flower. So we can also classify the flower on the basis of the position of ovary with respect to other floral leaves. Okay, so accordingly, we can classify the flowers as hypogynous, epigynous, or perigynous. In hypogynous flower, the ovary is superior. In epigynous flower, the ovary is inferior. And in perigynous flower, the ovary is half inferior. Okay, and based on the nature of the number of the sepals, petals, and stamens, we can classify the flower as trimerous, tetramerous, or pentamerous. Okay, here we do not consider the number of carpels. Here we consider the number of sepals, petals, and stamen, or we can consider the number of tepals and stamens. Okay, so if the number of sepals, petals, and stamens are 3 or multiple of 3, that flower will be called as trimerous, and this is the feature of Liliaceae family. And if the number of sepals, petals, and stamen, or the tepal and stamen, are 4 or multiple of 4, that will be called as tetramerous flower. Okay, tetramerous flower. Okay, and the tetramerous flower, the tetramerous flowers are found in Brassicaceae family. In which family? In Brassicaceae family. So this is found in Brassicaceae family, and the Brassicaceae family is also called as mustard family. This is also called as mustard family. Okay, and if the number of sepals, petals, and stamen are 5 or multiple of 5, that is called as pentamerous flower, and this is found in the family of Fabaceae and Solanaceae. Fabaceae and Solanaceae. Okay, so this is the classification of flowers on the basis of on different bases. Another example, another basis is presence of pedicel. So if pedicel is present, pedicellate flower. If pedicel is absent, that will be called as sessile flower. So let me write that part here. Basis is pedicel. The basis is pedicel. So one is pedicellate flower and second is sessile flower. Sessile flower. So let me write here pedicel. Okay, so in pedicellate flower, pedicel is present. In sessile flower, pedicel is absent. Pedicel is absent. Okay, so these are the different criteria by which we can classify the flowers. Now let us talk about the inflorescence. So what is inflorescence? Inflorescence is the arrangement of the flowers on inflorescence axis. Arrangement of the ovules is placentation. Arrangement of the leaves is phyllotaxy. Arrangement of the flowers is called as inflorescence. Okay, if the flower is present singly, that is called as solitary, and if the flowers are present in groups, they can be of racemose inflorescence or cymose inflorescence. So in case of racemose inflorescence, what happens? The inflorescence axis keeps on growing. Okay, so that means the inflorescence axis shows unlimited growth. Okay, and the flowers will develop on the either side of the inflorescence axis. Okay, whereas in case of cymose inflorescence, the inflorescence axis shows limited growth, and ultimately it will convert into a flower, and the flowers will develop on the either side of the on the side of the inflorescence axis. Okay, so and the arrangement of the flowers in case of racemose inflorescence is acropital. That means the younger flowers will lie towards the tip part, whereas in case of cymose inflorescence, the the flowers will show basipetal arrangement. That means in this case the young flowers will lie towards the base. Okay, so let me draw one diagram so that you can understand here clearly. Okay, so suppose this is the inflorescence axis, okay, and this is the growing point, okay, and this growing point is growing unlimitedly. So this is the growing point. Okay, and let me draw some flowers here. So this was the first flower to develop, and this was the second flower to develop. This is the third flower to develop. So you can see this is the so in this case the youngest flower is present towards the tip, and such arrangement is called as acropital arrangement. Okay, so this part, this is the growing point, this is growing point, and this is the young flower, and this is the old flower. This is the old flower, and this arrangement is called as acropital arrangement, and this type of inflorescence is called as what? Racemose inflorescence. Okay, and this is the inflorescence axis. What is this? This is inflorescence axis. What about the cymose inflorescence then? So suppose this is the inflorescence axis, and this is the growing point. This is the growing point. Okay, so this inflorescence axis will grow like this, and ultimately the growth of the inflorescence axis will stop, and when the growth of the inflorescence axis stops, the growing point will be converted into a flower. So this will form a flower. Okay, now suppose from this point one flower developed, so one branch will form. Okay, and when the branch formed, this is the growing point, and this growing point will grow like this. Okay, it will ultimately stop growing, and it will form another flower. Okay, and from this point one growing point will develop. Okay, and this growing point will grow like this, and finally it will convert into a flower. Okay, and from this point one growing point will develop, and it will grow, and finally it will develop into a convert into a flower. Okay, so you can see this is the oldest flower, and this is the youngest flower. So the youngest flower is present towards the base, and this type of inflorescence is called as basipetal inflorescence. Okay, and this is inflorescence axis. Inflorescence axis. Okay, so the inflorescence is of two types. What are those? Racemose and cymose. In racemose, the growing point keeps on growing. That means that shows unlimited growth. Whereas in case of racemose inflorescence, in case of cymose inflorescence, the growing point shows limited growth and gets converted into the flower. Okay, and the flowers are arranged basipetally. How? Basipetally. Okay, now let's talk about the floral formula. What about floral formula? Okay, so before that, let me take some pause. Let me take some rest, and then I will record once again. Okay. Okay, then let's talk about the floral formula. Okay, so in floral formula, what about the floral formula of what? The Fabaceae, Solanaceae, Liliaceae, and Brassicaceae. Okay, and we have some other points also. I'm getting a call. Just a minute. Okay, so what about the floral formula? So remember one thing. So when we write the floral formula, what are the things we have to write? first you have to write about the bract. You have to write about the bract. Okay, so the first thing which you have to write about is the bract, then the symmetry, then the sexuality. Okay, and from outer floral wall to the inner floral wall you have to move. Okay, so what about Fabaceae? In case of Fabaceae, the bract is present, so I will write BR. BR indicates the bract, so I will call this condition as bracteate condition. Okay, and what about the symmetry? The symmetry is zygomorphic. The symmetry is zygomorphic. Okay, what about the sexuality? It has male sex organ as well as female sex organ, so it is bisexual in nature. The flowers are bisexual. Okay, bract, then the symmetry, then the sexuality. Then we have to move from outer floral wall to the inner floral wall. So what about the outer floral wall? It is the calyx. So for calyx I write K. For corolla I will write C. For androecium I will write A, and for gynecium I will write G. Okay, so let me write this part one step by step. Okay, what about Solanaceae? In case of Solanaceae, bract may be present or bract may be absent, so bracteate or ebracteate condition. What about this? And in case of Liliaceae, bract is present. Okay, and in case of Brassicaceae, bract is absent, so it is EBR. What about this symmetry? The Fabaceae is zygomorphic, whereas these three families are actinomorphic. So for actinomorphic we write symbol like this. So this is actinomorphic. This is actinomorphic, and this is also actinomorphic. Okay, and what about the sexuality? All these families have bisexual flowers. All these families have bisexual flowers. Okay, and here let me write calyx, corolla, androecium, gynecium. Calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynecium. Here also, but in this case calyx, corolla are not present, perianth is there, so I will write perianth, androecium, gynecium. But here calyx, corolla, androecium, gynecium are there, so I will write calyx, corolla, androecium, gynecium are present. Okay, and all these cases the flower has superior ovary. Which ovary? Superior ovary. So for superior ovary I will write like this. Okay, so we have to underline the G. So if the ovary is superior, that means the flower will be if the superior ovary means the flower will be hypogynous. Okay, what about the number of carpels then? So in this case 1 carpel is there, in this case 2 carpels are there, in this case 3 carpels are there, and in this case 2 carpels are there. Okay, and in this case the carpels are fused. Here also the carpels are fused, and here also the carpels are fused. So I can say this is monocarpellary, this is bicarpellary syncarpous condition, this is tricarpellary syncarpous condition, this is bicarpellary syncarpous condition. What about calyx, corolla, and androecium, or perianth and androecium? Let me write that part. Okay, so here you write it will have 5 sepals. Here petals will be 1 plus 2 plus 2, and here the stamens will be 9 plus 1. Okay, and all the sepals they will be fused. So this is gamosepalous condition, and this is vexillary distribution, in which the innermost petals will be fused. Okay, so this is vexillary distribution, and here 9 stamens will fuse to form one bundle. So I will write 9. Whenever I keep a number within bracket, that means they are fused. Okay, so here 9 stamens are fused. Okay, so this is the floral formula of what? This is the floral formula of the Fabaceae family. Okay, what about the Solanaceae family? So in case of Solanaceae family also 5 sepals are present. Okay, 5 petals are present, and stamen are also 5 in number. Okay, and here the sepals are fused with each other, and the petals are also fused. Okay, and in this case the stamens they get fused with the petals. They get fused with the petals, and this is called as epipetalous condition. Okay, this is diadelphous condition, this is epipetalous condition. So this is cohesion, this is adhesion. Okay, now what about the Liliaceae family? In case of Liliaceae family, three tepals will be present on outer circle, and 3 tepals will be present on inner circle. Okay, and the outer petals or outer tepals are fused with the inner tepals, so I will keep them in bracket. Okay, there are 3 outer tepals and 3 inner tepals, so I have written 3 plus 3 because they are not present on the same circle, so I have kept them in I have written 3 plus 3. Okay, what about the stamens? So 6 stamens will be present. Okay, and these 6 stamens are also present, 3 on outer circle, 3 on inner circle, so I've written a 3 plus 3. Okay, and in this case the stamen gets fused with what? With the tepal, and this is adhesion condition, and this is epitepalous condition, this is epipetalous condition, this is epitepalous condition or epiphyllous condition. What about the brassicaceae? In case of brassicaceae, the number of sepal the sepal petal calyx sepal petal and androecium, what will be the number? Okay, so what about the number of sepals? The number of sepal is 2 plus 2. Okay, 2 outer sepals will be there and 2 inner sepals will be there. Okay, what about the corolla? The number of corolla will be x4. So what is x4? That means the corolla, the petals. So this is one petal, this is another petal, this is another petal, these are the petals. So they are arranged in a manner, so x shape. So I will say this arrangement is called as cruciform arrangement. This is called as cruciform arrangement. Okay, what about the stamen? The stamens are 2 plus 2 or 2 plus 4. It can be 2 plus 2 or it can be 2 plus 4. Okay, and in most of the cases it is 2 plus 4. In most of the cases it is 2 plus 4. Okay, in most of the cases it is 2 plus 4. Okay, so this is the floral formula. Okay, bracteate, zygomorphic, bisexual, 5 sepals with gamosepalous condition, 5 petals with vexillary estivation, 10 stamens with didelphous condition, monocarpellary condition with superior ovary. Here bracteate or ebracteate, actinomorphic, bisexual, 5 sepals with gamosepalous condition. Okay, 5 petals with gamopetalous condition. Okay, 5 stamens, and the stamens are fused with the petals, so this is epipetalous condition. Bicarpellary syncarpous condition with superior ovary. Okay, this is a bracteate, actinomorphic, bisexual flower. 6 tepals, 3 outer, 3 inner, they are fused with each other. 6 stamens, 3 outer, 3 inner, and the stamens are fused with the tepal, so this is epitepalous condition. 3 carpel, that means tricarpellary condition, syncarpous condition, superior ovary. Which ovary? Superior ovary. Okay, and brassicaceae means brassicaceae has ebracteate condition, actinomorphic, okay, and bisexual. Then we have 4 sepals, 2 outer, 2 inner, they are free, completely free. 4 petals, they are arranged in cruciform manner. 6 stamens or 4 stamens. Okay, this is called as tetradynamous condition, and this is called as didynamous condition. Bicarpellary condition, bicarpellary syncarpous condition. Okay, so this is the floral formula. Okay. Now let us talk about what the comparison of different families. Okay, so Fabaceae, Solanaceae, Liliaceae, and Brassicaceae. So what about the bract? In case of Fabaceae, bract is present. In case of Solanaceae, bract may be present or absent. In case of Liliaceae, bract is present. In case of Brassicaceae, bract is absent, so ebracteate. What about the symmetry? In Fabaceae, zygomorphic, in Solanaceae, Liliaceae, and Brassicaceae, the symmetry is actinomorphic. What about the sexuality? All these families have bisexual flowers. What about the placentation? In case of Fabaceae, the placentation is marginal. In case of Solanaceae, the placentation is axial. In case of Liliaceae, the placentation is axial. In case of Brassicaceae, parietal placentation. What about the class? Liliaceae is monocot, whereas Fabaceae, Solanaceae and Brassicaceae, they are dicot. They are dicot. Okay, Liliaceae is monocot. Okay. Now, what about the carpel? Fabaceae has one carpel, so monocarpellary condition. Solanaceae has two carpels, so bicarpellary condition. Liliaceae has three carpels, so tricarpellary condition. In case of Brassicaceae, we have two carpels, so this is bicarpellary condition. What about the number of locules? Fabaceae 1, so unilocular. Solanaceae 2 locules, so bilocular condition. Liliaceae 3 locules, so trilocular condition. In case of Brassicaceae, it can have one locule or two locules, so unilocular or bilocular. When it will be bilocular, if rhizophleum is present. What about the estivation? What about the estivation? In case of Fabaceae, the sepals show valvate estivation or imbricate estivation. In case of Fabaceae, the petals show vexillary estivation. What about Solanaceae? In case of Solanaceae, both sepals and petals, they show valvate estivation. In case of Brassicaceae, the sepals show valvate, imbricate or quinquensal estivation, whereas the petals show valvate estivation. They show valvate estivation. Okay, what about the Liliaceae family? In Liliaceae family, sepals and petals are not present. Tepals are present, and the tepals or the petals show valvate estivation. Okay. Now, what about the venation? Because Fabaceae, Solanaceae and Brassicaceae, they are dicot, that is why they will show reticulate venation. Okay. And Liliaceae, because this is monocot, so this will show parallel venation. This will show parallel venation. Okay. Now let us talk about the fruit. After the process of double fertilization, which is a feature of angiosperm, the ovary will modified to form the fruit, and the wall of the ovary will form the fruit wall, and the fruit wall is called as pericarp. Okay. So because this fruit develops after the process of fertilization, that is why we call fruit as post fertilization product or fertilized ovary, and this is also called as ripened ovary. But there are some cases in which the fruit will not have seed. Okay, and those seeds, those fruits are called as parthenocarpic fruit or seedless fruit. Okay, and the fruit which develops from the ovary, that is called as true fruit. And if the fruit develops from any part other than the ovary, that is called as false fruit. Any fruit that develops from the ovary, true fruit. Other part of the flower, any other part of the flower which produces fruit other than the ovary, that is called as false fruit. And the example is the apple. In case of apple, the fruit develops from the thalamus. It develops from the thalamus. Okay, so let me write here. In case of apple, the fruit develops from thalamus. Okay, and here the fruit develops from what? The fruit develops from ovary. Okay, and now let us talk about a special fruit that is called as drupe. And the drupe are those fruits which develop from monocarpellary superior ovary. And because they develop from the ovary, that is why these drupes are true fruits. They are true fruits. Okay, and the examples are mango and coconut. Mango and coconut. And remember one thing: in case of fruit wall, the fruit wall is called as pericarp. And the fruit wall is differentiated into three regions. The outer region is called as epicarp, and the middle region is called as mesocarp, and the innermost region is called as endocarp. Okay, and in both mango and coconut, the outer part of the pericarp, that is fruit wall, that is the epicarp, is thin and membranous. In both cases, in mango and coconut, let me write here. In both mango and coconut, the epicarp, that is the outermost part of the fruit wall, is thin and membranous. Whereas the endocarp in both the cases is stony. That means you can say hard in nature. So they differ in the mesocarp. In case of mango, what about the mesocarp? Let me write here. Okay, so in case of mesocarp, What about mesocarp, right? So in case of mango, mesocarp is fleshy in nature, and in case of coconut, the mesocarp is fibrous. And because in coconut the mesocarp is fibrous, so we call this as fibrous drupe, and because in mango the mesocarp is fleshy, so we call this as fleshy drupe. We call this as fleshy drupe. Okay, so this is about fruit. Now what the last part of this class is seed. Okay, seed is basically fertilized ovule. That means it develops from the ovule. Okay, and we can call this, and this is because this is produced after the fertilization, so we call this as post fertilization product, post fertilized product. Okay, and the seed has four components. One is seed coat, second is embryo, third is endosperm, and fourth is perisperm. Okay, so here we are talking about the mature seed. Which seed? Mature seed. Mature seed. Okay, and every seed will have seed coat, every seed will have embryo. But if I talk about the mature seed, the endosperm may be present or absent, perisperm may be present or absent. Okay, the seed coat provides protection to the embryo. Okay, and the seed coat may be single layered or double layered. Single layered in monocot, double layered in the dicot. And the single layered seed coat in case of monocot is called as testa. In case of dicot, the outer layer is called as testa, inner layer is called as tegmen. Okay, and the seed coat will cover the embryo, protect the embryo, but it will leave a space, and that space is basically micropyle. Okay, and through the micropyle, gaseous exchange will take place. Okay, and what about the embryo? The embryo develops from the zygote after fertilization, and this is present in the seed. Okay, and when the seed germinates, the embryo will develop to form the new plant. Okay, and the embryo has various components, like it will have cotyledon. The number of cotyledon may be 1 or 2. Depending on that, we can classify the seed as monocot or dicot. In case of monocot, the single cotyledon is called as scutellum. What do you call that as? You call that as scutellum. Okay, and apart from the cotyledon, we will have the epicotyle, hypocotyle, plumule, and radicle. Okay, the plumule will give rise to form the plumule will grow to form the shoot or the stem, whereas the radicle will grow and form the root or the primary root. What about the endosperm? This endosperm is formed from the primary endosperm cell, which is a product of triple fusion. Okay, and this is nutritive in nature. In mature seed, this endosperm may be present or absent. Okay, so if endosperm is present, that will provide nourishment to the developing embryo. Okay, if absent, then what will happen? The food will be stored in the cotyledon, and the cotyledon will provide the food to the embryo. What is perisperm? Perisperm is the remaining part of the, or left out part of the nucellus. Normally, when the seed develops, the nucellus is completely consumed, but in some cases, the nucellus may remain. Some part of the nucellus may remain, and that remain part of the nucellus is called as perisperm. Perisperm. Okay, so these are the different components of what? Seed. Okay, so now let me tell you about the monocot seed. Okay, so in case of monocots, especially in case of cereals, the seed coat and the fruit wall, they are fused with each other. So here this is basically fused seed coat and fruit wall. Okay, and the seed inside the seed coat, there will be embryo. So this is the embryo, and this part is the endosperm. So the endosperm and the embryo, they are separated by a structure which is called as epithelial layer, and that is diploid in nature. Okay, this part is endosperm, this part is embryo. They are separated by a structure layer, that layer is epithelial layer, which is diploid in nature. Okay, and this endosperm has two regions. This region is called as storage region, which stores food mainly in the form of starch or fat, whereas this outer region is called as aleuron. Okay, and this is protein rich. This stores food in the form of proteins. So this is protein rich. Okay, storage region stores food in the form of starch or fat, whereas the aileron stores food in the form of protein, and both of them, they together form the aileron, and because they are they form endosperm, and because they are endosperm, that is where they are triploid in nature. Okay, and here there is a structure, and this structure is called as radicle. Okay, and this radicle on the outer side is protected by the coleorhiza. Okay, so this structure is radicle, and this structure on the outer side is protected by coleorhiza. This is very, very important. Which structures provide protection to the radicle? It is the coleorhiza. Okay, and this structure is plumule, and this plumule on the outer side is protected by the coleoptile. Okay, and this is the single large cotyledon. Okay, and this single large cotyledon is called as scutellum, which is shield shape, and this is lateral in nature. Okay, let me write the ploidy level of all these structures. Okay, so epithelial layer is diploid in nature. Okay, seed coat and fruit wall, they are diploid in nature. Okay, and the coleoptile is also diploid, plumule is also diploid, radicle is also diploid, and coleorhiza is also diploid. Okay, so this is about the seed. So we are done with this chapter. Hope this was useful to you. And one more thing I have left, and that is the examples of various families. You can learn that from the book. There is no problem in that. Okay, so thank you so much. Take care. Bye.